what responsive org is. Essentially, responsive org was a movement in the image of the agile or the lean movements that is just a manifesto and a community practice or a community description of the tensions that every organization needs to balance going forward. So purpose and profit, right? Like, we're running businesses, there has to be a bottom line. Even if you're running a nonprofit, you still can't be in the red constantly and forever or you die. And there is a growing need, whether that's employees, whether that's in service to, whether that's just personal moral good, of purpose, right? Transparency and privacy. All of these different tensions that every organization has always needed to balance, but the spectrum is starting to move or has swung in a slightly different direction. Experimentation versus control, right? Like the organizations that we think of, whether that's the Zappos of the world or the Airbnbs of the world, are doing something on one of these spectra or several of these spectra that is unique in the world today. And that every organization, especially starting up, needs to be thinking about this as a differentiator for hiring, for retention, for bringing in new clients, for messaging, right? For every different aspect that makes up the business. So I was a community member. I ran a free event in early 2016. Tim was actually there, which is funny to reconnect years later.
Yeah.
And we ended up running, it was popular enough, we had something like 150, 200 people come to this free event, and I was expecting 20. We decided to run an annual conference around the ideas of responsive. So that's Responsive Conference. We're going now into our 4th year. This year it's being hosted at Zappos. Tony Hsieh is speaking, right? Like, we have people from all over the world and responsive practices from all over the world on stage. But what was really interesting to me as I've curated this and as my team has grown to produce this conference, we had 150, 225 people the first year. We're going to have 500 people this year, growing slowly, right? I never want to be so big that it can't be made intimate. But we've had the CMO and president of Global Snacks, Simon, at PepsiCo on stage. And then we've had, 5-person startups on stage talking about a specific differentiator that they're providing. We've had folks from Spotify, Kate and Andrea, head of talent and learning at Airbnb, were on stage last year. And over and over, and we have, so Tim's former boss, the founder of The Ready, Aaron Dignan, was one of the founders of Responsive Org, and he's been on stage several times. The thing that I hear over and over again, even in cases, and they're not all that common, but even in cases where people are doing aspects of responsive really well, they still have a hard time talking about it. So it's amazing if you are able to balance purpose and profit, even just a little bit, or any one of these spectra, but how do you communicate that? Whether that's communicating that internally to, trying to hire engineers in this city, or externally to customers and saying, this is the differentiator that really makes us unique, right? And so I started to get these requests from Simon at Pepsi, from all of these different folks saying, sure, responsive absolutely matters, but at the end of the day, if you're not able to communicate, or if we as an organization are not able to communicate about responsive practices internally to our employees, externally to our customers, this is a fundamental problem. If people don't know that we're distinct, we might as well not be distinct. If people don't know that we're purpose-driven, how much difference? It makes me feel good, right? But it doesn't actually benefit the business. And so we started to do work breaking down messaging and helping to distinguish these responsive or people-focused organizations, how they stood out and how we could help them move forward. So that was the original impetus behind responsive strategy sessions, and in many ways behind Zander Media.